Hello everyone, this is Brock Skaggs, and we're going to make another video here where we're going to do some part modeling inside of SolidWorks. And so today we're going to look at an example of this solder station here. And so this is actually an assembly. You can obviously see there's some multiple components here, but we're just going to really try to model something close to the red body of this solder station itself here. And so that's the real life device that I have, and we're going to try to model something up close to this. And to do that, we'll use the drawings down here, and as I sweep by here, that's the actual final SolidWorks assembly model if we were to take this all the way to the end there. But again, we're just going to try to work on creating this base model that you're going to see here. And what I did to prep for this is I just took a tape measure and a pair of dial calipers, sat down with the actual device, and just started measuring dimensions associated with the individual features, and made this very crude sketch here of what I would call the right side, and then also another crude sketch of the top view. I don't think all the dimensions are in there. For instance, the radius of these arcs here aren't in here, so we'll just play that by ear, so to speak, make it look like there's something close there. But overall will be in the right area. And so what I've got at this point in SolidWorks is just a fresh part template here basically going. I haven't created any geometry. You can see I've got the usual front, top, and right planes here that you always start off with, and then we'll start modeling geometry on top of it. So before we get started, let's talk about a plan of how we're going to create this feature here. And so when we want to think about this, we think, hey, I want it to look like that, and the isometric view would probably be one condition we want to have. And also we need to start thinking about what our units are. In this case, I don't know if I explicitly say it, but these are all inch units. And so if I go back and check the part template I'm working in, you can see I've already set it to the IPS, or inch pound second unit system. So we've got those two things identified. And now we need to start thinking, what's our base feature going to be? And usually there's more than one way you could start a model. And so in this case, I think I'm going to make the base feature this taller portion here on the left-hand side. One of the reasons I can do that is because if I model this correctly, then this next kind of tray area should be fairly straightforward because it shares a lot of the same outer contours as this first base feature will have. And then I can go ahead and make a cut extrude for the kind of cavity where you've got this sponge that sets inside there. And then we've also got a series of kind of vents here on the top side of the model that I can use with extrude cut. And notice they're all identical, they're just offset a certain distance, so we'll actually see a linear pattern there as well. And so that's kind of my very quick plan as far as when I'm thinking through how I'm going to model this part. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right in. And so I talked about that base feature being this kind of right side contour, which this right side drawing here gives us a lot of the information for. I basically want to kind of draw out this outer outline and make that into a boss extrude for my first sketch. Now I want it to look a certain way in the isometric view, so I need to make sure that first sketch is on this right plane. And so I'll just select the plane from the quick axis icon, select new sketch. I'll go ahead and turn off the planes at this point. I'm just clicking them all, holding shift down to select multiple items at once, and then hitting the hide command. So this gives me a nice clean environment to start drawing on. And so we're going to draw something close to this. You can see kind of the virtual sharps that I penciled in here. So I'm going to worry about these kind of rounds last and treat that as if they were nice sharp corners. So again, I'll use right mouse gestures to get into the line command, just holding right mouse down and flicking to the right, or you could come up here to the line tool, get you the same tool at the end. And let's put the origin on the kind of back side of the model. So I'll start right there, draw a horizontal line, then I think we went up at an angle, went up at another angle, came back down, there's a horizontal line, and then we come back to the end. And so this is part of the modeling process in SolidWorks, kind of getting that shape before the size part of it in place. And so this is looking fairly close. I've obviously got some work to do to fully define the sketch, but it'll give me a nice starting point. So now I'm just going to start picking off dimensions. Like this overall dimension is 5 9/16 of an inch. So I can go up here to Smart Dimension, click that point, click this line over here, and enter 5 9/16. Off the top of the head, I don't know what 9/16 is, but I can do some math inside of SolidWorks, so I can hit 5 plus 9 divided by 16 right there as an expression inside of this dimension dialog box, and it will actually compute the value. So it appears 9/16 is 0.5625 if you look at the left-hand pane here, where it's giving you properties of that dimension. And so next one I see working along the bottom is this 4.75 is the distance to that kind of virtual sharp. And so I'll go ahead and just apply that to this line. The overall height is 3.5, so I can click this line and that point and come over here to place it. Gives me 3.5. I can see another dimension here next to 3.5 is 0.5 from the base to that point there. So as you can see, we're just picking our way through the model. This overall height here appears to be 3 inches. So this time I'll click this line, go off to the right to place my dimension. Then another click, enter 3 inches there. We haven't got the location of this, so that's one of the things you start to do after you start to apply dimensions and geometric relations, and there's still some blue stuff. You're trying to figure out what freedom the model has. So as you can see, I can left click that. Its vertical position is staying the same, right? It's constrained to be 3.5 inches above this line, but it hasn't been told the horizontal position yet. And so it looks like that is 3.875. So again, that time I use the right mouse gesture to get to the dimension. And I can apply that at 3.875. So that's good. And again, I found something that's blue, and I'm just left click holding and dragging on it. Looks like I need to define that dimension there. And so do I have anything? Oh yes, looks like this 2.875 is a dimension. I can kind of see this almost erased line here. It appears to go to that virtual snap. We'll say it's 2.875. And so it looks like we're in good shape. We've got a nice fully defined model. And so let's go ahead and talk about fillets. Fillets you can either apply at the sketch level or at the feature level. For the features, you can go up to the Features tab, and you've got the Fillet tool right here. It's grayed out right now because I'm in a sketch. Or you can also apply fillets inside of the sketch as a sketch fillet. Really, it's personal preference. Sometimes it's easier to make a feature fillet. Other times it's easier to make a sketch fillet. In this case, let's just create a sketch fillet here. One thing I'm seeing is that the radius of that fillet and the radius of these fillets are definitely different. So I'm going to have to do this in multiple initiations of the tool. So I'll just click that line, click this line. It's sensing, hey, I need to put a fillet on the intersection of those two lines right here at the top right corner. And just looking at that, that looks a little small. So let's increase the radius. So I can start hitting the arrow keys here. And that looks fairly close, 0.3. Let's just make it a 0.25, a 1/4 inch radius there. And I'll hit enter. And that looks reasonable. And so now let's work on these bigger arcs. I'm going to go to the sketch fillet again. So it's this guy right here. I'll click just the point this time. That's another way to initiate a fillet. And so you can see again it's 0.25. That looks awfully small. So let's start growing this fillet and just see what we achieve. Let's go 1.75. That'll give us something to work with. So I'll just make it easy. Let's assume those both have the same radius for our working example. And we've got 1.75. And so again, I'm always keeping an eye and seeing where I'm at with respect to fully defining my sketch. And so again, everything's nice and black. I've got one nice closed contour and everything's fully defined. So this should be a good sketch to move right into a boss extrude. And so I will be going straight from the sketch. I'll click the Features tab and go into Extrude Boss and Base. So SolidWorks carries that right into the Extrude Boss and Base feature. I'm going from the sketch plane. Blind is fine. Now I got to figure out how thick that is. And so if I go to that top view, I can see right here that feature that I'm working on is 1.75 inches. So that'll be what we put in here for the distance that I move that sketch through space to create that boss extrude. And so that's looking good. And so let's just go ahead and accept that. So there I just went Control 7 real quick so I can see it in the isometric. And again, my goal is to create something similar to this so it looks like I'm in the correct view, or correct direction. The isometric view is what I'm assuming this image was taken in, and so when I go to isometric, it looks like I'm going in the right direction. So the next thing, let's make this tray here. And so if I look at this tray from the right side view, notice it shares a lot of the same contours, like this line, that arc, this line right here, all are kind of the outer boundaries of what we just created. So this should be a very simple sketch, and we can actually reuse some of those edges and bring them into this next sketch in order to help us quickly transfer that geometry. And so I'm going to first create a sketch. I'll create a sketch right on this planar face. And so I just left click that planar face, and from the quick access icon I can go right into creating a new sketch using that selected face as a reference. So this time I'll go up to the view orientation area here and go normal to. There we go. And so first thing I'm going to do is actually pull in some of this geometry. So we said there's a lot of shared geometry between this feature and the feature I'm trying to create. And so if I just want to like copy these edges into my existing sketch or my current sketch, I can go straight up to something called Convert Entities. So Convert Entities is a nice tool. I can just go through and I can click individual edges on this existing feature. And you can see they're all selected here, and I can hit the green check mark to accept it, and notice it's bringing it straight into this new sketch. And one of the nice things about this, if you do it this way, is that if I was to make modifications to that first feature, then those modifications would seamlessly carry into my second sketch here. And so that helps to chain those things together at times so you're not having to make individual edits, if you will, to sketches if you don't need to. The next thing I want to do is create a little top line here. And so we need to dimension this, and it appears that was 1 inch is the height of that tray. So I'll click this horizontal line, place my dimension off to the right, and enter 1.00. So that's good, except for right now we've got a fully defined sketch, but I don't really have a nice clean closed contour. If I zoom around a little bit here and maybe select those sketches, it's cluttering it up a little bit. Basically what I'm worried about is see how this sketched line now goes way off here into space, this sketch line here goes off into space, and really I'm just wanting to focus on this nice closed volume down here. So what I need to do is trim off these excess pieces of the line. So when I like to trim, I use power trim most often, so I go right up here to trim entities, and it's on power trim by default. And the nice thing about power trim is I can just hold down the left mouse button and start to drag. I get this line showing up, and as I cross features, they'll trim back to the nearest intersection there. And so I worked successfully on the left hand side. It looks like I accidentally let off maybe a little too quick on the right hand side, so I'll initiate it again and trim off there. And so notice SolidWorks is kind of acknowledging the fact that I have a nice closed contour here. You can see as soon as I got rid of those two lines, I got this nice kind of shaded region indicating that I've got a nice closed contour that SolidWorks can work with. So in this case, I've got a nice closed contour. Everything's black or fully defined. Notice I've only had to add 1 dimensions thanks to these geometric relation here. And then I'll go straight into Extrude Boss and Base. And so let's consult the drawings again. So notice here, I don't have the explicit dimension between this edge here and that edge there, like this dimension here, the width of that rectangle. But I do have an overall width of 4.5, and the width I used last time of 1.75. So yes, I could do subtraction here and come up with the answer. Or I could also do something in SolidWorks where I'm explicitly putting in that 4.5. So just for instruction's sake, I'll go ahead and do that. So one thing I can do is say, yes, I want to extrude this from the sketch plane. I do want it to be blind, or I could say offset from surface. And so if I say offset from surface, of course it has to know what surface I'm using as a reference. So I'm going to say, I'm going to use this back surface as a reference. I'm going to go the opposite way, and I want this sketch to be pulled in space until it is 4.50 units away from that face there that I've got pre-selected. So that's just another way to find out the kind of terminating distance of this boss extrude. Still have merge result checked here. That's good. I want to create one solid body from this model. And so let's go ahead and hit the green check mark. And looks like I'm in pretty good shape. I'm kind of questioning that. We do have some evaluation tools inside of SolidWorks as well. So I can go up to evaluate, and I can just use the measure tool here. And I can click, for instance, that face and this face. And notice it's saying that I've got 4.5 inches of distance between those two faces that happen to be parallel also. And so that's exactly what we're looking for. So everything's looking good at this point. So next, let's go ahead and create this cavity. We've got a cavity right there where we'd put that sponge in reality. So if we start looking from the right side view, it looks like I've got the depth of the cavity at 0.5 inches. Looks like a possible placement here of 5 inches from that edge of the cavity, 15/16 from that edge. And I've got the same dimensions here on the top view. So let's just focus on the top view, just knowing that that depth of that cavity is a 1/2 inch. So probably the most convenient reference for sketching for this cavity is probably the face at which we're going to be cutting out of. And so that's this face right here. And I can click it and create a new sketch right here from this quick access menu. Like usual, I like to sketch most of the time looking normal to the plate, which is what I have right here. And so what I need is just a 2-point rectangle. So I'll just create the rectangle there. And really that's all there is for the sketch. We just need to size and position it at this point. So this top edge in our sketch is 15/16 away from the outer edge. So I'll reference the outer edge, reference this horizontal line of the rectangle. And again, I don't know what 15/16 is off the top of my head, but SolidWorks makes it easy. Notice in the dimension area, I'm just typing 15 divided by 16. And then when I hit enter, SolidWorks will do that computation for me. 5 inches is the reference for the line down here. So again, using that right mouse gesture to hop right into the dimension tool, I can get a dimension going and hit 5 inches there. And then looks like the separation distance from that vertical face and this outer face is 3/16 of an inch. Again, I don't know what 3/16 is, but when I go to Smart Dimension, I can again enter mathematical expressions in here, like 3 divided by 16, and it'll do the computation for me. So that gets the right-hand side, and now for the left-hand side, doing a very similar operation. So there we have it. It's a nice fully defined sketch. You can see everything is black. It's also saying fully defined here in the lower right. I've got a nice closed contour, so I can jump right in from this sketch into a extrude cut. And I believe before we said that was a 1/2 inch down, so from the sketch plane that's fine. We want a blind. We don't want 4.5, definitely not, but 0.50. So I'll just update that depth dimension, hit enter to accept it, and I've got a nice cavity here. Another way we could see the cavity, if I go to a cross-section view, yeah, you can see right there as I pull through it, there's the cavity that we've actually created. Alright, so I'll go ahead and put it in isometric view, pop back into the PDF that we're following, and yes, we're making good progress getting to this shape. Alright, so next up, I'm just kind of thinking out loud. I've got these rounds and fillets, and usually I like to keep those to the end, but I think I'm going to go ahead and put those in there now, just because I could see if I go ahead and put these cuts in here, I'm going to have some broken edges, and maybe it'd be easier just to put one round fillet here, and here, and here. Looks like some on the back side as well. So let's, in this type, instead of using sketch fillets, we're going to be using a feature fillet, right? We've already got all the geometry made at this point, and we're just rounding over existing edges. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll go to the feature fillet here, and I'll just accept the default radius now, and notice I'm just clicking the edges that look like they need those fillets applied. So it looks like in this example I kept that edge sharp, so we'll just mimic that at this point. It does look like a little small on the radius, so maybe we bump it up just a little bit. 0.2. Ooh, 0.2 looks a little big. Notice it's going into that cavity. Let's go 125. Yes, that looks a little better. There we go. So notice now that sketch, or that feature fillet, does not have any sketches tied to it, but it's a feature all on its own. So working good, working good. And now we've got these patterns of little vents, if you will. And so these do present a little bit of a challenge here. One thing we could be thinking about, what's our reference for our sketch? So I'm going to create one set of these, then I'll pattern the rest of them. But I need a sketch to make that first cut extrusion because we're removing material. But if I look, I don't really have a convenient face that's sitting right here. And also my existing planes, if I show those, the closest is this front plane, but it's at the very back of the part. And I guess you could say things like, well, you could play with that, what is it called, the from. If I come up in the edit features, I could say from the sketch plane or offset from the sketch plane would be one way to do it, but I'm not a big fan of that too much. Instead, I'm going to use a different tool inside of SolidWorks. And so all the tools we've done at this point were modifying kind of solid geometry, right? We were either adding to it, we were removing from it, or we were rounding off edges for the fillet. But there's also geometry items inside of SolidWorks that aren't tied to solid geometry. For example, we've got reference geometry here, and also curves would fall into that category as well. But reference geometry, you can create your own planes, just like we have a front, top, and right plane. And this will be very convenient when you need a plane to sketch on, which is exactly where we find ourselves now. And so I'm just going to go straight into the plane. And notice it's somewhat abstract as far as what it's asking for here, right? It says, well, give me up to 3 references. And SolidWorks is basically asking, give me enough information to fully define or fully describe this plane in the 3-dimensional space we're working in. And so in this case, if I look at my drawings, I need to offset this plane from this back face 5/8 of an inch, 0.625, and it needs to be parallel to this back face. So one thing I can do is say click that planar face, and notice it says, hey, I can deal with that. If you're going to be parallel to that planar face and just offset a certain distance, we can get going right now. I don't need much more information. And so that's correct, except for now notice I'm going in the wrong direction here. I need to pull it in the opposite direction. So on the left hand side we have the ability to flip that offset direction. And instead of 1/10 of an inch, I need to increase that to 0.625. And so I'll accept that. And now notice I have this nice plane 1 feature that is exactly in the right location for me to do my sketching on. So I'll click it and start a new sketch, just like we've done before. So in this case, yes, I'll go normal to here. And now I'm actually sketching on that plane. And so if I look at this model and what I've got here, they're just kind of rectangular cuts, except for on the one corner there, it's got that round on it. And so what I'll do is start drawing this cut, something roughly like this. And then let's go ahead and use those convert entities again as another nice practice for us. So I'll go ahead and click convert entities, see if we can grab that, this edge, this edge. Ooh, having a little bit of trouble there. Can we get it? There we go. There we go. Struggled a little bit with that top one, but as you can see, I've got a line, I've got an arc, a line, and another arc, and it's basically capturing that geometry that I'm tracing. Like last time, I don't need all of this. So I'm going to go power trim again, holding left mouse down, and just cut off these areas that I don't need anymore. So that's looking pretty good. Oops. I think it was Control 8 goes normal too. And so now let's apply some dimensions, firm up some of this geometry. And so a 1/2 inch it looks like is the height. So we'll go 0.5 there. And here's an interesting one. We've got an offset here of 1 inch. This is how we're describing that. And so I don't really have anything that I can do that with at this point, but here we're going to create another piece of reference geometry. Inside the sketch we can create lines and we can create center lines. And center lines are more for referencing than for actually creating geometry. So I'm going to go create a center line at this point. And notice as I hover over this edge, I can snap to the midpoint. Right to the lower right of that pencil, you can see the midpoint icon. So that's telling me I'm at the midpoint. And I just want to draw this strictly all the way to the bottom here. And so one of the nice things about center lines is they can help you do dimensioning. And so I can dimension here. I'm going to click this line, the center line. And if I hold the dimension right here to the left of that center line, it's showing 0.48. But as soon as I cross over, notice that right extension line is jumping. And so it's giving me the dimension to what would be symmetric on the other side, which is exactly what I want. And now I've got 1.00 inches there. So I think we're in good shape. Let's see if we can create an extrusion, or cut extrude with this. So I'll go bold, boss and base. I am fully defined. I'll go extrude cut. And yes, it's grabbing that right there, showing the preview that is going the right direction. We definitely don't want it that thick though, right? That cuts are fairly small. Yes, 1/16 of an inch are the cuts. So let's just change that to 0.1. What did I say? 1/16 of an inch? Yes, 1/16 of an inch. So I was going to go for 1/8 of an inch. So again, instead of doing the math in my head, I'll just type 1/16, 62.5 thousandths, and hit enter here. So we're getting close. We've created one of these, but you say, hey Brock, I need a bunch of those, and I need them on different sides as well. So don't worry, we can make this happen. And so one thing I could have done is created that other one here that's going to be roughly in this location inside of the sketch. I didn't do that, so let's go ahead and work with some reference geometry again and create it with a feature. There's different ways to mirror in SolidWorks. One is a feature mirror, like here, which we'll implement, or you could also mirror inside of the sketch. Same thing with patterns. You can pattern at the feature level or at the sketch level. And so if I look again, I don't have a plane that's convenient to do that mirroring, right? But I can create another plane. I'll go up to reference geometry plane, and this time I want a plane that basically runs right in the middle of this section right here. And so it's going to be parallel to this face, and it's going to be parallel to this face. And notice just by clicking on those two faces, that I get a plane that is parallel to the two places and is right in the middle. Notice it's default saying, yes, I see face 1, I see face 2, yes, I see the parallel. I'm going to give you a mid-plane and see if that's what you want. Obviously, you can go override these things, but SolidWorks is doing a pretty good job here of picking what I'm wanting as far as being able to associate my desire with my first few clicks. And so I've got this plane 2 here. And so let's try a feature mirror at this point. And so I can go right to the mirror tool. It's saying, what do I want for my mirror phaser plane? So SolidWorks is trying to prompt you with the information it needs. And so we want this plane 2. That's the whole purpose of why we just made the plane. And then the feature to mirror, I want to mirror that cut that I just made. So one way to make that selection is by clicking on this icon right here. It'll expand the feature tree that we've been working with. And that cut is cut extrude 2. Notice as I go through the tree, it highlights there. And as you can see, it's already showing the image of that other cut happening on the other side of that body. And so I'll just accept that. That's exactly what I want. So that's looking really good. It's very promising. But you say, I need more than 2 of those, right? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those total. 7 rows, I should say, total. 14, I guess, actual cuts. And they're all spaced out 1/8 of an inch apart. So to do that, we would take advantage of pattern. Yes, you could create individual sketches, you could create individual planes and do it one at a time, but that would be very inefficient. And so instead, take advantage of the tools that SolidWorks offers and use a linear pattern in this case. So we've got linear pattern up here, and we'll just walk through the items here as far as what it's asking for. And I've got direction 1, direction 2, features to pattern. Okay, I'm starting to get a little confused. So instead of going to direction 1, I'm going to go jump right down here to features and faces. And so again, I've got this menu or this tree structure already exploded out. And what am I wanting to duplicate? Well, I want to duplicate the cut extrude, but notice if I did that, it would only show the kind of root of our mirror, right? But I want to also include the mirror as well. So I have both the ones kind of on the right and the left, if you will. So I want to duplicate those. I need to specify a direction. And so you can use an edge on the part is sometimes a convenient way to do that. So I'll just click like this edge because I want it to run parallel to it. And as soon as I click that edge, notice it's starting to show me a preview here, partly because I have partial preview here showing up. So it's saying what's the distance you want between the different instances of the pattern. Well, we said that I believe it was 1/8 of an inch. And so how many do you want to have as the next? So it's counting the first one, and so it's 2, so we would need to jump this up to 7. So I'll just click the up arrow right there. I get 7 right there. And I'll accept that, and notice now we've got more of those. I'll go right here to the features and turn off our planes to kind of declutter this up a little bit. And I believe we've reached our desired geometry here. Yes, I might have tweaked with the spacing here a little bit. Let's double click, just look at the parametric abilities of SolidWorks. I can come back here, edit this dimension. Let's say, hey, I want to space those out a little bit more. Maybe add 25 thousandths. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. So notice we were very easily able to jump right back into that feature. Again, all I did was left click the feature, hit edit feature, and then I modified that separation distance right there. One of the nice things about the parametric abilities of SolidWorks. So I think we've reached the end of this video. It's been a little bit long, but hopefully that's okay. Thanks for watching all the way to the end if you're here. What we've been able to do is show off some of the modeling capabilities of SolidWorks, creating this nice solder station from a somewhat crude drawing that I have as far as sketch of the dimensions for the solder station itself. We explored some features, some boss extrudes, some cut extrudes, fillets, as you can see. We also did a few things that are a little more advanced, I guess. We're doing some mirroring, we're doing some patterning, we use some convert entities there. So hopefully this is helping you build up your tool set of the features you know and are comfortable with in SolidWorks so you can create more complex geometries. As always, thanks for watching the video.